Being here. My name's Lou Frederick. I'm a state senator from District 22. That's North and Northeast Portland. And I want to thank all my colleagues for being here. It's quite a group. They keep coming in. That's great. And I want to thank the media for being here. I get a chance to be part of the People of Color Caucus, and 10 years ago, that would have been me and Jackie Winters standing here. So that's a big change, and it really is very good to see. The group with me is slowly beginning to reflect the population of the state, and slowly using that reflection to take on the issues, often long ignored by state government because those issues were not brought up. We're bringing them up. We are not silent now, and we will not be silenced. But the kabuki theater of the Republicans showing up for work threatens to reverse the important efforts that we've made this year. And we will not be silent about that either. Some believe spectacle and theater equals governing, while a number in my former profession believe that, that's news, by the way, I was a television reporter, believe that news is what distracts most people. I do not. You have in front of you a long list of important bills designed to help all Oregonians, but they will die, not because they did not go through the process, not because they were merely partisan. And a good number passed the House and the Senate with unanimous approval. They will die because our colleagues have traded a stunt for governing. They have decided in adolescent fashion to take their ball and go home. They said that they wanted to work for the people of Oregon, but they decided not to show up for work. They violated promises made last year, and that has jeopardized any future calls for trusting them now. It is appalling, and we will not be silent about it. I have a number of people who will be speaking here, and I want you to know that we are trying to make sure that we get these bills passed, and we want to make sure that the people of Oregon understand that we're working and trying to get things accomplished here in the Capitol. We suggest that our Republican colleagues come back, and frankly, we need just 4 of them to come back to do that. But we need to get them back here. Thank you. Am I supposed to? Senator James Manning from Eugene.
Thank you, Senator Fredericks. First of all, good morning. I want to thank Representative Bynum and all of our House members that are here, Diego Hernandez, Sanchez, and I just tell you, the Meeks, the list goes on and on and on, and my Senate colleagues. My name is James Ivory Manning Jr. I'm the senator from Senate District 7, which is northwest Eugene up to and including Junction City. I have a very diverse district in terms of my constituency. I have urban and I have rural communities. The bills that we have worked on this year are representative of all of Oregon. And I got to say that some of the bills that are really important to me, as you can see, I am wearing my veterans cap today because for years, we have been flirting with the idea of having a Veterans Memorial out on the State House grounds, on the Capitol. And all veterans, to include the leaders that are on the House Republican side, voted, and we all voted for that bill. We got that bill right here, right now, but we can't get it across the finish line. So I do agree with my colleague, Senator Fredericks, when he made the term kabuki theatering. That's all this is. We're talking one bill, and we're talking about sacrificing everything that we have gained for one bill. One bill that they participated in. One bill that they got just about everything that they asked for. There was a lot of negotiations. Make no mistake about it. My colleagues, House and Senate, worked on this bill for years and years. And they decided that they were going to close down the state of Oregon over one bill. That's not governing. That's not what we were elected to do. I have voted against bill and lost, but I never ran away. I never ran away. And to do what my Republican colleagues are doing is a grave injustice to all Oregonians, especially their constituencies. I can't imagine going to work, taking an oath of office, and then intentionally violating that oath of office and taking taxpayers' money and going on a vacation. As a former police officer, I have seen incidents and cases like that. Now, I am not referring to any particular person as a scam artist. I'm not doing that. But I have noticed scam artists to perform in those types of issues and situations, taking advantage of people. This is heartbreaking. I'm appealing to my Republican colleagues, especially those veterans, that we have worked so hard to get established on the Capitol lawn a final contributions to our Vietnam veterans who have never received the proper welcome home, an opportunity to have a monument, a place for healing for them. In the military, we learn one thing: selfless service. Come back to work, act like you're a part of the military, and do your job. Thank you.
Good morning, and I appreciate Representative Bynum for putting this conference together, this press conference, and our press release that we put out this morning. My name is Mark Meek, and I represent House District 40, and that's Oregon City, Gladstone, unincorporated Clackamas County. And I'm here to dispel the myth that the short session was made and specifically made for really small bills or budget bills. Because if that was the case, we would have had it constitutionally adopted like the state of Washington. So that's not the truth. And I also want to let you know that I find it very offensive that other representatives and colleagues of mine feel that their bills or other bills are more important than the ones that we've spent not just weeks on, but years on. We have some bills that began their work in progress during the long session of 2019. I've been on a task force for over 18 months to put together some racial disparities solutions for people of color trying to purchase and be a homeowner and achieve the American dream. So that's just one example of some of the bills that are at stake and at risk here. So it troubles me that now they're going to dictate that they're going to come back on Sunday. We did our job. We fulfilled our obligation. And the rest of your bills, they don't matter. We can do them next year. Well, if you have the means and the ability to survive another year, that's good for you to say. But if you're homeless, and if your health is at risk, and if you are just looking to get by, that's not an acceptable answer. So I agree. I believe that we need that this process has to discontinue at this time, and to have one party dictate over another party what is important and what is not important, what needs to be passed and what cannot be passed, is offensive and disrespectful and should not be allowed in this body. I was elected by my community to represent all Oregonians in my community, and to say that the rural community is not being heard versus maybe the people of color of Oregon are not being heard. Who represents them? So I'm here to say we need to get back to work, come and do our job. We have ability to finish off this session beyond March 8th, and I hope that we can come back and get that done. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, or good morning. Buenos dias. My name is Teresa Alonso Leon. I represent the great people of House District 22, Woodburn through the north part of Salem. It's been an honor representing House District 22, where my community elected me to pass key legislation, including climate policies, and represent them here in Salem. They elected me by a significant margin. to do work that is important to all our communities. This session, we have a chance to pass great legislation, to make significant investments into our state agencies, send flood aid to Eastern Oregonians, address our homeless population, and give our students a voice and respect to post-secondary education. This legislative session, I was proud to co-chief House Bill 4109, which phases out a cancer-causing pesticide called chlorpyrifos for our farm-working community. My colleagues who have decided to take a vacation on a dime of taxpayers' money and ignoring their duties, I am very disappointed. After the budget was approved by the Full Ways and Means Committee, we found out through much advocacy and work that we would be receiving $7.5 million for a community project in Woodburn to build the very first community center. Ladies and gentlemen, Woodburn is one of the only cities its size that does not have a community center. We need a place for our community to come together. We need a place for multi-generational, multilingual community members to use space. But that can't happen. That can't happen because our colleagues choose not to come to work. I worked on several bills, like many of my colleagues. It's really important for me to improve our health equity. I had a bill that died in 2019 to expand the regional health equity coalitions, and I accepted that it died because that's what it takes. We work hard to come back. I gathered a work group and worked really hard in the interim, and now this bill is going to die if my colleagues don't come back to work. I have a task force that I worked on very hard that brought over 50 partners in respect to working on a task force for higher education to make sure that our underrepresented students have a voice in respect to their education. That may not happen either. So we need our colleagues to come back to work and honor their oath to do their job. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? I'm not going to speak.
Still technically morning? No, yes it is. Good morning. My name is Tana Sanchez. I'm the state representative for House District 43, North and Northeast Portland. I'm so frustrated at this moment in time. I'm trying really, really hard not to be angry, but it's very frustrating when you know all the bills that were talked about here, all of the different things that are sitting there waiting could just go away. And I appreciate Mark Meek's comments that, wait till next year. We can just bring it back next year. Well, some of it we probably could, but not all of it. And the fact that someone chooses to want to cherry pick what we pass and what we don't pass, that's not democracy. That's not the way we work. We cannot continue this behavior. We cannot continue this disrespect. And in my opinion, to the people of the state of Oregon, it is unacceptable behavior. And if all we want to do is just pass budget bills, well, guess what? There are bills that are attached to those budgets that have to pass as well. And if they don't pass, then that budget doesn't work. These are the technical pieces that we have to figure out here. Something has to change here. We have been through this several times, and it doesn't work, and people are laughing at the state of Oregon because of this. It's so inappropriate. It's so disrespectful. And I really, really want our Republican colleagues, all of them, to get back to work. Because I told somebody today my father would turn in his grave if I didn't show up to work. It's not the ethics that we are supposed to have in this job. We're elected to do a job. Show up.
Hello, I'm Diego Hernandez, State Representative for House District 47. And I'll just say, I'll keep it really brief. And the big picture for me is this is the third walkout. Nothing guarantees that this won't continue to happen. And if we look at what our democracy was about, how our representative democracy was built, the folks that wrote the Constitution could have not foreseen that this could have happened. We're one of 4 states that has these quorum requirements, a very minority. And yet a very minority is shutting down government and impacting the will of the voters who elected us to be here and everything that we come and represent and fight for. The work that we do is for the people that we represent, particularly those of us who represent communities of color, marginalized communities, low-income and working-class communities. We want to build a society that works for them, that is more equitable and just. And by shutting down this process and picking and choosing things that benefit them, it's a historical precedent that I think shows us where we're headed and where we could be headed, and that anytime they are not happy with any sort of bill, our government is going to be shut down. And there's going to be an unprecedented amount of power to a minority in a way that our representative democracy never intended it to be. So I urge my colleagues to think about the big picture. Think about Oregon, the state of Oregon, and America, and our values of democracy, and how we are here for the long run. We're going to be a country for a long time, and how should we function? And I hope that democratic values continues, and that we find ways to work together and come to work. So thank you.
Good afternoon now. My name is Jeff Golden. I represent Senate District 3, much of Jackson County. And to me, one of the saddest parts of this chapter is the narrative that we've heard over and over and over again about how climate legislation is urban Oregon having its way with rural Oregon, and that rural Oregon wants no part of that. That's so different from my experience with hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands, of my constituents, rural constituents, and constituents in neighboring districts represented by Republican senators who insist as their #1 priority that we take strong climate action in the face of the dramatic, really worrisome changes we're seeing in our part of the world, primarily wildfire and water quality issues. Rural Oregonians have said to me all through my campaign and ever since I've been here, please do everything you can to support bold climate action. So when I hear speeches on the Senate floor about how this legislation will devastate and decimate rural Oregon, and people of conscience have no choice but to leave this building to protect their rural constituents, I don't know who they're talking about. I understand there's great differences of opinion on this legislation, but I come from a part of the state that where people were hurt severely by the timber disruption 30 years ago, and a big part of the harm was the disinformation that they received about the cause of that transition, ignoring so many of the factors. And this is really an unpleasant reliving of that time to me. And I ask my Republican colleagues to come back and represent all of their constituents, many of which have talked to them and me about the imperative of moving fast and boldly and intelligently on this legislation, and to keep in everyone's mind how much greater the cost of inaction is than the cost of action.
Good afternoon, everyone. I decided to speak as a voice, as an ally for the people of color, Caucus. I'm really thankful for their work and their voice. I represent House District 37, which represents Westland and Tualatin, and right now is in the news for reconciling a lot of history of racism. And I think it's important that we listen to the voices of the people of color caucus and have our colleagues come back to work so we can pass bills that address inequities in our state that have historically been allowed to happen. And we now have a good representation in Salem to say our voices need to be heard, and we need to be heard now. So thank you.
Are there questions?
Questions?
What do you guys think should happen if there's no deal brokered by Sunday? Should the governor call a special session? Should you wait until the next session? What?
Thank you. We have given all of our confidence and trust in our leadership. So I would deflect any questions about that to either the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House.
If there is a special session, will you show up to get your bills passed?
Again, we will deflect all those questions to either the Speaker of the House or the Senate President.
Of course we'll show. Yeah,
This isn't a game, folks. This is not a game. This is governing. And the idea of constantly going back and forth in a game sort of setup is something that we've got to get past. We've got to get folks to understand that it is not a game that we're playing here. We're trying to govern the state of Oregon. And we can't do that if people decide that it is a game. They're going to take their ball and go home. That's a spoiled approach. Frankly, a spoiled adolescent approach. And we really can't do that anymore. So we're saying, you need to come back. Our Republican colleagues need to come back today. They don't. To try to bargain and whatever, they need to come back today. And our Senate President and the Speaker of the House and the caucus leaders are in the process of trying to figure out how to deal with what they're going to do next. We're going to basically deflect to their decision at this point. Yes.
Senator Frederick, I want to refer to a Vox article that came out about 5 days ago that suggested there was this thinly veiled layer of white supremacy around this walkout. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, just from as a constituent and as well as a member of the media. Is there any truth to that? Do you feel that there's this view by Republicans that white rural voters matter more than urban people and people of color?
Barbara Smith Warner, I'm the House Majority Leader. I would just say to read the article and draw your own conclusions.
I will agree with Barbara. We have changes taking place in our state. The demographics that you see behind us are an example of those changes. Sometimes some things are going to come into that mix, but other times it is simply a situation where people are trying to be strategic or play whatever kind of approach that they wanted to use. We need to get back to work. It's that simple. If in the next election people are saying they want to work for you, ask them if they're going to go to work.
What was that?
Thank you.
Thank you.